The Toyota BZ4X, Toyota's old electric SUV, it was not very well loved. So now they're here with a brand new crack at it with the Toyota BZ. Brand new. Now, we didn't love the old BZ4X for a few key reasons. It didn't have enough range, it didn't have nearly enough performance, and it had a really confusing name. I guess cutting the name down simplifies things in that regard, but more importantly, this thing is going to have a lot more range and a lot more power, so it can actually keep up with its competitors like the Ioniq 5 and the Mustang Mach-E. This is Edmunds fully tested, but with a little bit of a twist because we're here at the Edmunds test track, so we put it through its paces for acceleration and braking and skid pad, but then we're going to take you along with us on the full Edmunds EV Range Test to figure out just how far this thing can go on a single charge. We're Edmunds, and we test hundreds of cars each year on the road and at our private track, so you get the most trusted reviews. If you want to know which car, truck, or SUV is the best, then stick with us. Now, the big reason that we are so excited to get this vehicle in for testing, even in pre-production form, is a big jump in horsepower. The BZ4X, even with dual motor all-wheel drive, it only had about 220 horsepower, which is a lot less than everything else out there. But this new BZ, it's got more horsepower, and that should translate to some much better times at our test track. Oh, and by the way, if you're in the market for a BZ4X or any other new car, head over to Edmunds.com where we'll even help you find the best price. So, did that big boost in horsepower make a difference? Oh yeah. The BZ took just 4.6 seconds to go from 0 to 60 miles per hour and covered the quarter mile in 13.1 seconds. And its time would have been even better if it hadn't hit its top speed limiter at around 101 miles per hour before it crossed the finish line. This influx of acceleration means that the BZ crushes the old front-wheel drive BZ4X by a big margin, about 2.5 seconds in both 0 to 60 and the quarter mile. And the Toyota doesn't only compare favorably against its predecessor, it also outruns two of its closest competitors, the Hyundai Ioniq 5 and the Honda Prologue. Problem solved. Braking performance also improved slightly, with the BZ taking 122 feet to stop from 60 miles an hour. However, our test team noted that under braking, the BZ feels a bit unstable with a lot of nosedive, and that makes the SUV feel unsettled, and that will hurt your confidence during panic stops. Against its rivals, it gets edged out by the Hyundai, but beats the Honda and the old Toyota. On the skid pad, the BZ pulled 0.86 lateral G. While its acceleration can make it feel athletic at times, the large amounts of body roll and steering that lacks feel hurt it dynamically. This thing will scoot in a straight line, but on a windy road, it won't be that fun. The Ioniq 5 has better dynamics and a slightly better skid pad number, but the BZ does once again edge out the Prologue. The newly labeled Toyota needed a performance boost to be competitive, and in this update, we're happy to report that it's gotten it. And it helps that the BZ is pretty svelte compared to these other electric SUVs. It's about 300 pounds lighter than the Hyundai and a gobsmacking 800 pounds lighter than the Honda. Yeesh. With track testing out of the way, it was time to slow things down and find out if the BZ's range had similarly improved. It is nice and early in the morning here at Edmunds HQ. We're about to start the range test. We've got all the equipment hooked up to the car. I've also got coffee, which is perhaps the most important piece of equipment. Now, it's gonna be a long day because this vehicle now has 278 miles of estimated range, and that's a huge improvement over the last one's 220 or so miles of range. And Toyota has also made that improvement without making the battery so much bigger, so I'm not quite sure what wizardry they pulled off there, but that means that on our range test, it's going to be a long day because we aim for an average speed of 40 miles an hour. So we go for a mix of 60% city, 40% highway driving to simulate real world conditions. And that's something that we do with every vehicle that we test, so you can trust our results because same roads, same methodology, and hopefully consistent results. So let's get started. Okay, you are joining us in progress now on the range test. We're about 3 hours in and things are going pretty well so far, especially because I got a refill. So you may have seen this thing in a bunch of our videos. This is a V-Box, and this is what we use to actually track the data for the range test. And the nice thing about it is, one, it's super accurate, so we use that over the trip computer on the car to verify our results. And two, it actually tells me my percentage of highway distance and my average speed in real time, so I can keep track of how I'm doing, because if those things are off, I gotta come out here and do this again, and we don't want to do that. Now, the last BZ4X we tested, it did go over its range estimate, and we're hoping for the same thing with this vehicle, and that it gets to join the 300-mile club, because that's sort of the standard for modern EVs these days. So far, we're trending in that direction, but we'll just have to check back in later and see if it can actually make it. Oh, and range wasn't the only thing that was updated on the BZ. Yesterday at the track, we got to take a closer look at some of the interior updates. Now, the BZ has a new dashboard design up front, which I like. I think it looks better than the old design, and it's also added some functionality as well. Moving this screen kind of up and back a touch has opened up this area, and it now has dual wireless charging pads, which is great news because everyone carries a phone these days. Now, the climate controls, they have moved into the screen, which is generally something that we don't like, but here in this instance, I don't quite hate it as much for two key reasons. One is that you're still getting these nice knobs, so if you need to change the temperature, you can do that very quickly. And two, if you're in the map view here, you can hit this button and it actually hides some of the climate controls that you're not going to use as much, and you get some screen real estate back. However, my favorite new addition to the interior, we're gonna find that in the back seat. Now, the backseat of the BZ is incredibly roomy, as you can tell. I'm just under 6 feet tall. This seat is set up where I like to drive, and there's just more leg room here than I know what to do with. And on this limited trim, the rear seats are heated as well. But that is not my favorite thing about this back seat. It's actually these USB-C charging ports. And the ports themselves are not new. What is new is how much juice they have. These ports are able to pump out 60 watts. And what that means is you can use them to power anything from a MacBook to a game console. It is just a ton of power that they're putting out, and it makes them really convenient to use for anyone who's trying to keep themselves entertained while sitting back here. Now, the other nice thing about these range tests is we get to spend a lot of time behind the wheel, and we get to know these vehicles pretty well. But if you want more information about the BZ or any other new vehicle on the road, all the way from an F-150 down to a Honda Civic, head over to Edmunds to get our full ratings and reviews. Now, the first difference that you notice between driving the BZ and the BZ4X is that jump in horsepower makes a huge difference on the road. This thing just feels a lot more agile. The old one, you kind of had to really get into the throttle to get it moving, to get on the highway, to do anything. But this thing merges, passes, gets up to highway speed with so much ease that it just really smooths out the entire driving experience. A few things that I picked up about this interior that I like. These seats are actually quite comfortable and quite supportive, which is important on a day when you're doing a lot of driving like this. And I also found that the heating and ventilation works pretty well too. Now, we can't actually use that on the range test because that will sap power from the battery, so I tried it beforehand. Good work there. The BZ also has 4 different settings for its regenerative braking, and they all seem to be pretty well calibrated. When we run the test, we run with max regen on because we're trying to get as much energy back into that battery as possible. And even in that setting, the BZ is very smooth and easy to slow down. It's not herky-jerky at all like some other EVs, like I'm thinking of our Dodge Charger Daytona in particular. Now, we also have to take a second to talk about this instrument cluster. I do like that it's high up on the dash. It's almost kind of between an instrument cluster and a HUD, which is nice. You do actually have to move the wheel a little bit low to be able to see all of it though. So you end up driving with your hands feeling like they're a little bit in your lap, but you get used to that over time. The thing, however, that I don't really like about this cluster is that it lacks customizability, and also it kind of tries to display too much information at one time. If you look next to the speed, there's like 5 different safety icons, and they're so small that it's really kind of hard to tell what the system is trying to tell you at any given moment. Now that gets me into the thing that has actually bothered me the most about driving the BZ, and that would be the driver aids, and in particular, what's called the driver attention monitor. So there's this little camera here right above the wheel that is sort of watching your eyes and watching your face to make sure that you're paying attention to the road. But the problem is when you place the sensor right here, if you drive at all with your hands on top of the wheel like this, it blocks the sensor out fully and it loves to beep at you and tell you to either sit up or move because it can't see your face. Now, this wouldn't be as much of an issue if this system was easy to turn off. And as you can see, you get this handy menu here where you can actually activate and deactivate most of the other driver aids on the fly. But for that one in particular, we have to go into this other menu. We have to scroll down here. You have to go to driving assist, which you can't actually get to until you come to a stoplight. So now we've come to a stoplight where we're gonna stop, and that's gonna allow me to access the driving assist menu. And I can go into here, but as you can see, I'm still not allowed to change any of the things in this menu. To do that, I actually have to put the vehicle in park, and then I can turn the driver monitor off finally. And this is not a persistent thing too. This thing actually comes back on every time you turn the vehicle on. So before you leave, you have to remember to turn it off. And if you don't, you gotta go through this whole dog and pony show to actually get the car to stop yelling at you. Now, there's one final annoyance that I have with the BZ safety systems, and that is actually its hands-free driving system called Traffic Jam Assist, and it works on the highway at speeds under 25 miles an hour. It allows for hands-free driving. And the issue isn't with the performance of this system, it's that the speed threshold is so low that it's constantly turning on and shutting off. So every time you dip below 25, it says, okay, take your hands off. And then every time it goes above it, it beeps at you and tells you to put your hands on. And it just ends up being this dance of on and off that becomes really annoying. And that's sort of endemic to the rest of these safety systems. It's not that they don't work well, it's that they are overly communicative to the point of being annoying because they're always beeping at you. And as I like to say, a safety system that's so annoying that you end up shutting it off, it might as well not be there at all. All right, that's enough talking from me for now. I'm gonna go ahead and finish out the rest of this range test, and we'll see you back at Edmunds HQ with the results. So on our test today, the BZ covered 276 miles, and that's just under its EPA estimate. But more importantly, that is a vast improvement over the BZ4X, and it actually makes it competitive with other vehicles like the Hyundai Ioniq 5 dual motor. But we should note that both of these SUVs trail one of our segment leaders, the Tesla Model Y, by a good amount. To find out how much energy it will take to refill that battery so you know how efficient this thing is, and where you can find all those numbers along with the range figures on the Edmunds EV Range Test leaderboard. And please, if you've been enjoying our videos, the fully tested ones, if you like our range test results, we would ask you to consider giving us a like and subscribe so we can keep making more of them. With its improved range and performance, it seems that Toyota has really fixed the major issues that held the BZ back when it had its old name. And on top of that, they've even managed to make it less ugly by getting rid of all that terrible black cladding on the front and on the fenders. Shortly after filming this video, Toyota released pricing for the BZ, and at first glance, it might seem like the price has dropped because it now starts at around $2,000 less. But that's just because there's a new version with a much smaller battery pack, and if we compare like-for-like trims, there's actually been a small price increase across the board, and the all-wheel drive limited version we tested has gone up about $1,500 to just under $47,000 with destination. But given the big gains in performance and range, that feels like money well spent, and the Toyota no longer feels overpriced like it did before. Because of where the BZ was starting from, this update was less about getting ahead of the competition as much as it was catching up, and I think on that front, Toyota has succeeded. It used to be the case that if you wanted an EV and you wanted it to be a Toyota, you would have to make some major sacrifices in the process, but now, that's not the case. And that back seat, absolutely fantastic. So for the latest news on this Toyota or anything else on the road today, stick with us here at Edmunds and be sure to check out our full ratings and reviews, which will help you find the right car. Thanks for watching.